Welcome to our monthly ACTS Town Hall. Thanks to our member companies for helping make these town halls possible. Your support makes our mission a reality. Together in safety, stronger in collaboration. The ACTS Town Halls are an open forum to discuss concerns and present potential solutions to improve damage prevention and excavation safety. These town halls are meant to be a discussion, and you're encouraged to ask questions and share solutions. A recording of this town hall will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent via email after the town hall has concluded. Before the end of the town hall, each of our panelists will highlight a moving forward step to ensure we stay focused on practical and impactful solutions. We are pleased to have a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So to get us started, our moderator will begin with brief introductions.
Hey everybody, my name is Roger Cox. And we're going to talk about damage prevention today. That's not a shock. But what we're going to talk about is going to require a mind shift in the way we think about things, from just following the rules to really focusing on what does it take to protect people and the vital infrastructure that we all depend on. I've got an expert group of folks with me, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves first, and then we'll get to the town hall. We'll start with Matt Smith.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Smith with the Illinois Commerce Commission, and I have a responsibility over our one call group, the enforcement part of it, and our pipeline safety group as well.
Scott?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Crawford, Vice President and CEO with Virginia 811, and happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
And Mike.
Thank you, Roger. My name is Mike Sullivan. I'm the president of Utility Safety Partners, formerly Alberta One Call Corporation, here in Alberta, Canada. And I've been in this role for just about 15 years now.
Cool. Guys, I know it's difficult sometimes to point out just one thing, but this town hall is really about an aha moment, about something that happened. You thought, shoot, we may need to be doing this different. So I want you to think back over the last year or so, perhaps, and see if you can identify a moment that somehow fundamentally changed the way you thought things were working and caused you to either make a behavioral change or to make a cultural change in your state or your area of jurisdiction. Mike, would you start that off?
There's been a lot of them over my time here with Utility Safety Partners and Alberta One Call. Shifting calls to clicks, that's kind of getting close to ancient history now, but doing that enabled a lot of things, right? I mean,
sure.
it just did. And it was a challenge to the way a lot of people think. But in more recent history, it would be the alternate locate provider. I mean, hands down. That was a 2.5-year project in the making before we rolled it out. But in terms of a paradigm shift, there is no other I can think of in recent memory that has had as profound a impact than the alternate locate provider.
So before we go on, just for those folks who are listening that may not be familiar with that program, what is different about that program versus traditional locating?
Well, a lot. I guess in a nutshell, a lot. In Alberta, just to give you a little bit of history, locating and marking really hasn't changed in decades, 30, 40 years, maybe even longer. And depending on the utility, I mean, when you submit a locate request, you get your ticket, your notification, and most of those excavations in the greater urban areas, it's typically always the same utilities that are, gas, telco, electrical, that type of thing. A lot of distribution assets. And many, many, many years ago, those utilities were dispatching their own locators to locate and mark those assets in the area of the excavation. And then some time ago, 25, 30 years ago, those utilities got together and created a consortium. So now they were dispatching one locator to locate all assets, which was a great improvement at the time. But what that did inadvertently, perhaps maybe to nobody's real knowledge at the time, but what it did, it created an artificial bottleneck where contracts that those distribution asset holders created for that contract locating, they limited the number of locators that were going to be available to do those. And over time, just proliferation and education awareness for call before you dig, click before you dig, creates a increasing number of excavations, locate requests, everybody doing the right thing. And but that bottleneck got tighter. So we looked around the globe and we said, okay, what can we do to change the locating and marking process in Alberta to better reflect, what we have available and to improve the process? And there's no shortage of locators in Alberta. We are, we are the Texas of Canada in a sense that we have hundreds of thousands of kilometers of buried pipeline, and those assets have to be located and marked every day. So there's no shortage of locators. How do we open up this process, the locating and marking process, to a greater number of locators? And how do we determine their competency? How do we determine if they are able to do what we need them to do? And that was really what that 2.5-year task force worked on, is to how do we do this? And once we laid all that out, there was the people that were going to be deemed suitable or competent, certified to locate and mark these assets. They had to go through an assessment protocol. They had to take training. They had to go through orientations with all the utilities that were participating, and I believe there's 9 different utility companies that were participating. And it wasn't just, okay, you're a locator, here's your ticket and away you go. There was tremendous amount of emphasis on the assessment protocol to make sure that those locators that were submitting to be an ALP locator could do so. And to make a long story short, once that was done, then those locating contractors, their names, their contact information appears on Utility Safety Partners' website. So now when an excavator submits a locate request, at a certain point during the locate request process, online or by phone, but we're about 99% online with our excavator digging community, they are asked, do you want this to be an ALP locate? If they have the option to say yes or no. And we rolled this out a year ago, August, and since then, over 50,000 excavations have chosen the ALP locate process. And when that happens, the excavator now is provided with that list that appears on our website, and they will choose the locating contractor, the approved alternate locate service provider that they wish to work with. Between them, they establish the cost, they establish where, the when, how long they'll be there. And the locator, now they are dedicated to that project, essentially. And they will stay until the work is done or however long they're needed. The communication between the excavator and the locator it just grows, obviously. And the relationship also grows. So there's really no magic to it in a sense that we've maintained the level of safety, the integrity of the locating and marking process that was there before. We haven't diminished that. In fact, maybe we've improved it. Obviously, depending if you look at the data, maybe it has improved. But what we have done is reduce the amount of pressure, I think, on the locating contractor to rush from job to job to get the work done. It's reducing locate delays, obviously. And for the excavator who chooses the ALP locate, yes, they are now paying a fee for the locate. However, I would say in most instances, perhaps all instances, those costs are simply added to the cost of the contract, right? Whomever they're working for, the proponent's going to take that cost on. And now with 50,000 plus ALP excavations behind us, the data is phenomenal. So In the Canadian Common Ground Alliance DIRT report that was just published a few months ago, or about a month ago, Alberta's damage rate is 4.78 damages per 1,000 locates. That's the conventional locating and marking. And then that includes everything, not just the distribution assets. But again, those distribution assets make up the majority of the locates. For the ALP locates, the damage rate is 0.006 damages per 1,000 locates, a 99% reduction in damages. And that's what we're after. If you're not damaging anything, you're not, the risk of injury, the risk of fatality, the societal costs related to damages, everything disappears. It melts away. So that's the objective. Now, the icing on the cake, if you're the utility owner, they are saving millions of dollars, obviously. And it's, as I said earlier, there are no shortage of locators in Alberta. And this has essentially doubled the capacity of what we had before with the consortium locate model. And when I look back, I mean, I just got some data yesterday. November 2024, 4% of all excavations in Alberta selected the ALP process. November 2025, over 17% selected the ALP process. So the confidence in the ALP is obviously growing. The digging community, if they're selecting the ALP process, they are building relationships with contractors, locate service providers that they are confident, and they'll keep going back to. So, and on that, just to go back, there have been 3 reported damages in over 50,000 excavations. So in terms of an aha moment, that's it, hands down.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. And I think the audience needed that explanation just because ALP doesn't tell us much, but what you just said tells us a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Scott, I know you've got an aha moment, and it's probably completely different than Mike's, but would you share it with us?
Yeah, well, there's really, a few, but looking at something more recent that has unfolded that we've launched and are still exploring. We hear a lot in the industry about electronic white lining and the benefits and so forth. And I think a real aha moment for me was when we were looking at, and again, and I would like to highlight one thing Mike said. He used a great word, pressure. We in Virginia, and I know in Alberta and then across the United States, there's been a lot of pressure on the whole 811 process. And so to improve efficiencies, we as stakeholders here in Virginia were looking, and it really became an aha moment when we did an analysis on the impact electronic white lining could have on saving locators time at the site, to have a very quick visual representation of the excavation area that in all likelihood, in not all cases, but in many cases, could provide a much more finite, definitive area of excavation that text might not be able to fully articulate, or may articulate in a way that requires the locator to locate a wider area than they might otherwise have to, costing more time. And so when we looked at this, and we found that, quite honestly, in some circumstances, this could save a locator 50% or take 50% less time at an excavation area, up to even 70% in marking time. That can allow that locator to now do more, and to be able to get to sites and to challenge some of the issues that had been discussed about excavation readiness and all of that. And so we were able to put in place electronic white lining into our ticket platform, processing platform, which is the Exactix system with Earth. And so we have that now available. And so I know when we say electronic white lining, that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. We do not use attachments at this time. That's something we're looking at in the future. There are some concerns around that. That's a whole other story. But what we have is the ability for our web ticket entry users to be able to draw on the map an electronic white line, an excavation polygon that is still alongside the notification polygon, with the notification polygon being slightly larger to make sure all utilities are notified. But that excavation polygon can be attached to the ticket now so that the locator has the ability to look at that imagery and to be able to fine tune and work from that as opposed to just the text. We did have to, and Matt might find this of interest, we did work as stakeholders together, worked with the State Corporation Commission in Virginia, the Division of Railroad Protection, Utility Protection, Safety. We were able to work with them to get a law change that allows image to, in a very simplistic way, non-legalistic language, image can now trump text. So meaning if a locator gets a ticket where electronic white lining has been used, the locator can default to the image even if the text says it's a larger area, if that makes sense. If there were a damage and the excavator was digging outside of that image, then the locator is still protected from any liability with the damage. So we had to get that infrastructure in place legally. We have it launched. The problem has been that we still rely on an email-based ticket delivery system. We are currently, as I speak, switching more to offer a JSON delivery platform that will allow locators to be able to receive the image through a web-based ticket delivery platform. And so in that way, they'll have better, easier access to the image with the electronic white line. And then we, of course, have some plans in the future that maybe we'll relate to in a future question. But that's kind of been the big kind of exciting thing that we've been working on this past year and a half and so forth.
Good for you, man. That's great. So Matt, from your perspective, what have you come to realize just from your overview of what's going on in Illinois? What is your aha moment?
Well, I really thought about this quite a bit, and there are several of them, but I'll just jump into a couple of them. In Illinois, they passed a law that was called the Illinois Dig Once Act, and the whole point of that is to try to coordinate on state right-of-way broadband installation. And they have a large amount of grants that are going out on this topic, and it's to try to make sure that they're going within a certain area, they are impacting the roadway the least amount. And this is a new program. They're working to hire a person to manage the program, so we'll see how it works out. But there's a similar program in Chicago here in Illinois, and I've been able to sit in and talk to people there, and it's very interesting that you're getting ready, and we'll just pull a block, for example, and somebody's going to put in a new facility within that block. And they give this proposal. The proposal goes to the people that have facilities in that area, and they look at it. And what they're trying to do is coordinate with one another to have the least amount of impact on other facilities as much as possible. And if you say, hey, I'm going on this north side, I'm going to jump across, whatever the case is, and one of the facility owners can say, no, that's going to impact us negatively. We have whatever facility here that's critical, and therefore we do not want you to go on that side. And the whole point is, in both cases, everybody is coordinating to try to get into the same area and the least amount of impact as possible. So that has been one of the most interesting aspects. Now, to do that on a statewide, everywhere besides for the state right away, that becomes a little bit more difficult to do, but at least it's a template and an idea, and then to see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I'm sure Chicago has full control, permitting and everything that most states or provinces would struggle with, probably. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So is anything happened, and Matt, we'll continue with you on this one and just kind of back up. Has anything happened for you guys in your state or province, as the case might be, that's caused you to rethink, hey, what we're doing is we got to change it? Has anything happened in your state this past year that's caused you to rethink the direction you were going And not that you have changed it, but you're thinking we got to change directions here.
Yeah, definitely. Before the meeting, we were talking a little bit, and you mentioned David Applebaum from PHMSA, and
Yeah.
that's the federal regulator for the pipeline safety. And Mr. Applebaum was kind enough to come in and help me work with a couple of our largest gas operators. And we were trying to really focus in on excavation damage prevention, and what can we do with that. So we started gathering some data uh, as part of that project. And in the meantime, we were also had some commission orders that told these utilities, it was a couple electric utilities and some gas utilities, that they had to bring a percentage of their locates back in-house. So once they started doing that, with the information that Mr. Applebaum gave us access to with these utilities, or helped us get, we started looking at what's his locate timeliness, which seems to be our biggest issue, and then also the damages. And what we're seeing is, with the in-house locating, I mean, it's not even close. The locate timeliness is almost perfect, and the damages have dropped as well. And from my experience, I worked at a utility before I came to the Illinois Commerce Commission. And I look at that, I know how some peer pressure can help, because if I was working in the field and we had a person that was locating for us that worked with us, and he went out and mislocated, and we were out all night on a damage, he's probably going to hear about it the next day. So it's a little bit of interesting pressure that has helped them, but it's improved. It's really shown us the path of where we need to start going. Although some of the utilities, and this is kind of going back to what Scott or Mike was saying with the bottleneck, we're looking at single source locating as well, to try to get away from, hey, this utility takes us 5 times longer, and that's going to impact all the others. So now everybody kind of will be on their own. And I think we're getting it down to that. We have some more work to do, but we're getting closer.
Good. Thank you, sir. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, as far as one of the other larger kind of issues that we've tackled, and I do want to start with some definitions very quickly. When I'm talking about web tickets, okay, we have what we call internet originated tickets, and that would include single address tickets. It includes ticket revision online, such as canceling a ticket or updating a ticket. And then what we refer to as web ticket entry tickets, which is where a member, or excuse me, an excavator would have an account with us and can enter tickets online. And so that represents just a fraction of the overall whole of web tickets. The single address tickets are incredibly accurate all of the time. They're like 99.9% accurate. And when I say accurate, I mean that there's no issue with the ticket itself, with erroneous or potentially erroneous or confusing information on it. Where we had an AHA, which had a huge impact on Virginia 811 and how we do things, is looking at that subset of web ticket entry tickets, where we found, contrary to what we would have thought, that they were having 100 times more likelihood of having an error on the ticket. Now, again, none of these are causing damages. We haven't had a ticket cause a damage in well over 15 years, knock on wood, but it would be something that could potentially cause a damage that we would not want that ticket to get out. And so when we looked at the data and we saw that they had such a higher rate of potentially having an error than a phone ticket, then that's when we recognize we still want to have that functionality, that web ticket functionality and so forth. But to mitigate the risk, that's when we started to jump into AI. And what we were really excited about doing, and what has had a huge impact, is developing an AI model that can audit those web tickets, not the single address tickets. All of those are good, but the web tickets at 100%. And that led us to create a brand new department a couple of years back, about 3 years ago, QA/QC department, that then when the AI identifies a potential erroneous ticket, it's directed to that department to verify, to check, and if there is an error, then to take action on it and contact the user or the person who submitted it and try to fix the ticket and such. And that's all done live, real time, each day. And where we're seeing, once we launched that AI model, it actually turned out it wasn't 100 times more likely to have an error. It turned out to be 200 times more likely to have an erroneous ticket. And again, that's just information that needed to be cleaned up on the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been something that then is building within our company, the use of AI, and we're now having to retrain the model. So we're going through an analysis involving that. We're going to have that have more of a machine learning capability injected into it, and then we're going to be looking at the potential of taking a model that can then audit phone tickets at 100% as well, and have, of course, similar process in place for QA/QC. So that's been one of the more exciting projects that sparked from an aha moment, that was pretty notable, at the time when it happened. Yeah.
That's intriguing. So you're training AI to do a better job?
Yeah, and quite honestly, this comes from some of the background in the financial industry. Right now, I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars of transactions going through credit cards, right? And there's models that look at your spending, and when it picks up on a discrepancy, it directs that to a human who can review and then call you and say, hey, did you make this purchase? So in a similar sort of mindset, yeah, the AI can look at the tickets, and based on literally millions of tickets that we had it trained on, it can then look at cues that this might be a problem, and then in a similar way, like a transaction, direct it to a human who can then verify, oh, that there is a problem there, and then have that better service component where a human is reaching out to the excavator, not a bot or anything like that. So, and that may be the future, who knows, as that develops, but we still want to have a high level of service, and that's where the human part really needs to come in. So, and then based on feeding back information to the model, what we're trying to make better and develop more is that we can tell the model, you were right, you were right, you were wrong, you were wrong, you were wrong, you were wrong, and it can start to adjust its calculations and such to have a better predictive analytic capability with what it's doing.
Mike, I know it's difficult when you listen to folks like these two guys talk about what's going on where they're at, because it's exciting. You can get caught up in it. But back to your aha moment, even though ALP is exciting and you've only got a year's worth of maybe data, a data set, I know you're still thinking about how you can improve it. That's what aha moments do. Well, what are you learning now rather than resting on the great thing that you got going? What are you thinking about now that's going to cause you to be different next year?
I'm just going to coast on ALP until I retire in 20 years. We can't. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot. I mean, and you're right. We're in our infancy. We're crawling still. There's things that we need to do to improve it. One of the areas that it might expand, and we had a chat with our board member companies from the transmission pipeline side, and saying, is there something ALP like that could apply to the transmission pipeline industry, which is more heavily regulated for obvious reasons. And there potentially is. Now they've gone back and they're thinking about how that could apply. That might be where ALP goes next. But we need to fine tune it. There's no question about it. And we're really happy with what we've learned so far. We're not the first to do this or similar. I mean, this has been the norm in Australia, for example. It's always been the excavator that is charged with the locating, not the utility. So they look at us like, why would you do that for the utility to locate, right? And we look at them and say, okay, well, there's maybe a better mousetrap here. But one of the things, like to sort of deviate from ALP for a moment, one of the areas that, we're struggling with a little bit. Now in Canada, only one province has what I would call comprehensive damage prevention legislation, and that's Ontario. They brought that in 2012. For the other provinces, in Alberta including, the transmission pipeline industry is heavily regulated, and they are required to register their assets with one call and across the country, and which is the case here. Now, also in Alberta, we have the provincial regulator for transmission for pipelines, and they are also required to register those assets. So we have a lot of members, for Alberta, where there's close to 900, 850 members, 60 some odd members. And everybody else that's not one of those asset owners that's required to registers their assets voluntarily. And that has always been a challenge. There's a number of municipalities that have not registered for a variety of reasons. There are a number of other utilities that haven't registered for a variety of reasons. And we've long sought legislation that would capture all of that. So if you own buried utilities within a public right-of-way, you have to register those assets with us. And that was a major push for many years. So one of the reasons why I was hired was to try and bring that in. And there's been a lot of challenges along the way. But more recently, the sentiment is, well, wait a minute, let's hold on legislation here, because we've been able to do things with utility safety partners that we might not have been able to do in a heavily regulated environment that was, mandated legislation, all the other language that goes with it. And one of those things, obviously, the alternate locate provider. Another major thing that we were able to do was the annual membership fee that we shifted to 5 or 6 years ago. And for those who aren't familiar with it, just like every other one call center, just about, we used to have a revenue system that was based on notifications. As we shifted to the web, and 10 years ago, and the mandate to shift locate requests from members and contractors to the web was about 5 or 6 years ago. And now we're looking at homeowners potentially mandating that to the web. So many things cascaded from that decision. And one of those was reduced notifications, because all of a sudden, and Scott, you're seeing this too, the locate request, the ground disturbance area tightens up, because I know I'm the excavator. I know exactly where I'm digging. I'm drawing it. Here's my polygon. And so your notifications diminish. We worked with our member companies to reduce their notification buffers, so they have less triage and to do, and they get a lot less bogus notifications. But what that also did, it reduced our revenue so dramatically, to the point of 30 some odd %, which was not sustainable. The trajectory was, we're going to go bankrupt if we keep doing this. So we went to a annual membership fee, which was, the way we did it was based on risk and consequence. That wasn't the entire influencing element, but that was a major influencing element. So what that did, whereas before, if you had all your assets concentrated in major urban centers, you're on every ticket, you're going to pay the most, etc. And which, if you look at it from different asset perspectives, may or may not be fair. Municipalities were paying heavy fees, and whereas transmission pipelines, they weren't, because geographically they weren't near the major urban centers. Yet, from a risk and consequence perspective, if the risk of hitting a transmission pipeline might be low, but the consequence was high, how do we leverage this to try and level that playing field financially? So that's what we did. And number of years later, it has righted the financial ship. We're in much better position now than we were many years ago. And again, we could not have done that, or it would have been very challenging to do that in a regulated, legislated environment. So that's one of those things that we're really, really rethinking now. Like, okay, wait a minute. so many great things have cascaded from shifting calls to clicks, and now the AOP and our annual membership fee. And one of the things you'll note as well, Scott, is by going to that white line, the digital white line, if you will, we don't get claims anymore. I used to get a dozen claims every year that we were named in because somebody damaged the utility. Now, because the excavator is putting that locate request in, the automatic question is, well, here's your area that you were requested to us to locate, and you were digging outside of that area. It ends right there, right? I mean, there is no claim. You damaged it. You didn't ask us to locate there. So there's a lot of benefits that come from all of that shifting calls to clicks. And one of those things that made us pause again was that legislation question. And when you have legislation, you're locked in. You're locked in for a long time. And even goal-oriented legislation or regulation has its challenges in that regard. So we're really rethinking how do we draft legislation that requires asset owners to register their assets with us, that requires the excavator to submit a locate request every time. But the additional language that's going to go along with it moves with us technologically, organically over time. That is a huge challenge. And that's where we're stuck right now.
Some of you may know that I've been involved in administering an enforcement program since 2017 in Mississippi. Every complaint, alleged violation, or damage that occurs in Mississippi comes through our office. And I've heard a lot about ownership. Different stakeholder groups saying the other group will not take ownership of the problem. And it's caused me to think a lot about what is ownership, and if ownership is really the problem, then how are we going to define that going forward? So that's causing me to think in some of our publications and some not only articles I want written about ownership, but also the training that I do. I want to talk about ownership. If you agree that shifting ownership is important in damage prevention, Matt, what does it look like? What does ownership look like in damage prevention?
Well, I think one of the things that has to happen is you have to have executives at the company that are aware of what is taking place. And we had a recent case where you had people that did not understand what was going on, what was taking place, and basically admitted to that. So I think looking at senior leadership to make sure that they're aware of that this is going on, because that's probably the biggest thing that we hear repeatedly is, well, I had no idea what's going on. And definitely on the pipeline safety side, when we send something to a mayor or a president of the company and they reply back, I had no idea. So I think getting them to get the data, to see the data on a monthly basis and have a discussion to try to track that, to see where that's at. I think that's where it needs to go with the ownership as well. In 2020, I took over and I said that we had this problem with locate timeliness and I would get it changed. And it's almost 2026 and it's improving slowly. I did not expect anything to take quite as long as what it has. But from some of the conversations that I've heard recently, it sounds like some of the companies finally are realizing, hey, they're not going to stop. They're going to continue with this and we need to do something different. So it is a positive on pipeline safety. I can level penalties heavy enough that it will change the mindset. On one call, the penalties are pretty minor and it takes a lot longer for that to finally catch up with people to see that they need to do something different. But, as far as ownership, one time we told one of the utilities that all you need to do is pick up the phone and call someone. So that utility responded by having people call up and say, hey, we're not going to be able to get to this locate. Well, that's not what we meant. I should have been a little more clear on that, that there has to be that back and forth discussion.
Yeah.
So again, it takes time, a lot of time on one call side, but we are seeing a little bit of a change, and that is a positive. And I think that's how we can get to that point.
Yeah. Scott, from your perspective, what does ownership look like in damage prevention?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question and you know, somewhat tough one to answer at a very, very, very basic level.
Yeah.
It's really understanding because this whole 811 process and damage prevention process, all of that, it's a multifaceted puzzle, and all the pieces need to come together correctly. And I feel that, you know, almost all of us have, you know, some good legislation in place, or, you know, cultural practices in place and so forth that can help bring that picture into what we want to see. And there's some evidence of that. I mean, some of the you know, like what Mike was saying about, you know, the new process they're doing. I mean, that's an amazing statistic of how they're driving down damages and so forth. But I think it's really understanding that we're doing this as a team. We all have ownership. Each and every one of us has ownership in damage prevention. And then understanding within that broader umbrella, what's my specific area? It's one thing I challenge our team at Virginia 811 to continuously think about: what do we have control over that we can try to make better for everybody else to help them be able to better have control over what they have control over, and working together. So for example, recognizing that locators, you know, we don't want those, what internally we would call as over notification, meaning that our polygons are too big and now we're inundating members with locate requests that they're not even near the utility. You know, we have to be in control of making sure we're fine tuning that as well. With the recognition, a very good advice on Mike's part about the revenue issue there. But you know, that's one thing that we can have control over. The quality of the ticket we have control over. The big thing, I think, and I'd like to play off of something Matt was either alluding to or was you know, stating there, in addition to getting the senior teams involved in their ownership of this across the board, what we do see, and I'm sure this is very similar pretty much across the board, we see subcontractors or subcontractors of subcontractors coming into the state from other states without fully understanding Virginia law. And it's, you know, that's where we really need to see the general contractor who's bringing in these subs, to get them adequately trained in the law, to have oversight that they're not blind boring or something like that, and so forth. So not in addition to the senior team, but also to get those subcontractors on board and recognize that the person ultimately over that project, they have the ultimate ownership over all of this. So those would just be a few things I would think of in that question. Yeah.
Well, thanks. So, Mike, I'm going to twist that question just a tad bit. If we
course you
all
are.
take, if we all take ownership, why do we still have problems?
That's a great question, and literally, it's one we've been struggling with for a while, and probably it's one of the driving reasons why we are embarking on an interesting path forward here in Alberta. When we unified resources with the Alberta Common Ground Alliance, and we became utility safety partners, and also the Overhead Assets Program, our mandate broadened, you know, from one call to what it is today. And with that, we have to listen, not have to listen to, but we are more attuned to all stakeholders. And the stakeholders are broad. It's an extremely broad base and growing. And yet, and every one of those stakeholders contributes to the damage prevention process. But I don't know if all those stakeholders realize that they do. So what we've done here to help address this and answer your question is, we are creating a damage prevention certification program. And in fact, next week, I'm conducting interviews for our first executive director for that DPC, that damage prevention certificate training. And what we wish to do is create a training program which may capture existing training, but create training where there are gaps, to have to achieve a damage prevention certification. If you look at my boards of directors, or even the industries that work with us every day, you'll see a damage prevention manager, damage prevention specialist. Damage prevention is in a bunch of different titles. What allows that person to say, yes, I'm a damage prevention manager? There's no certificate. There's no, they may be an engineer. They may have experience in land. They may have experience in a variety of areas, but there's no certification that says, I am certified to be in this role, or whatever the case may be. So that's the gap we're trying to address. And it is not just going to be for Alberta. We want to do this across the country, across North America, maybe across the globe, because it's necessary. And we want to initiate this. So to have that damage prevention ownership, I think we first have to identify who the stakeholders are. And in some cases, inform them, did you know that you are a damage prevention process owner? It may be this small wedge, but you own that process. And in order for that entire damage prevention process to function, those process owners have to know what their job is, have to know that the ultimate goal to reduce damages or no damages, they have a part to play in that. And that's what we're trying to establish. It's not enough to assume that everybody knows what to do. We have to know that they know what to do.
I like that. That's a whole different topic.
That's a whole different topic, and it's not written yet. So maybe come back in 2 years.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, thanks for sharing some of your previous aha moments. What do you think, or what do you see as a future change it needs to be made to get us across the finish line of damage prevention? Because we can't see the finish line from where we are. Matt, you have an idea about that?
Whenever someone performs a root cause analysis of a damage or whatever the case may be, we've taken classes on this. And one of the interesting aspects of a really good root cause analysis is you pull people from outside of your group to help on that. And the reason why is because sometimes you think, you're just so used to saying, oh, it's this, and then another person will ask a question and say, well, why is it that? And then once you start explaining it to them, then it's like this light bulb comes on and you realize, oh, we've been looking at this wrong, or we've been doing this wrong, or whatever. So I think it really does take pulling some people from outside the industry that do not know anything about it to try to get their opinions and to see it, but also listening to others. And I have several notes I've taken today on topics that Scott and Mike have discussed, and I know Roger, you and I have discussed on the phone before. It's always listening to other people, see what works, try that if at all possible, and be open to change. I believe that's the biggest thing people need to do.
Thanks, Matt. I like that. Scott, what do you think?
Oh my gosh.
What
Can
future
we
change?
Yeah, underscore everything Matt just said. Definitely, I love bringing in people from outside of the industry. Sometimes we get tunnel vision when we're in in any industry for so long. Bringing in outside perspectives or looking at other industries and what's going on and applying that to what we're doing. My example of the financial industry and using AI to monitor credit card transactions and how that could relate to ticket auditing and such would be maybe an example of that. I think more of that's needed. I think we need to be really looking at it as 811 centers, utility operators, and so forth, looking at bringing in more statisticians, more data analytics, individuals who are trained in data and relying on their input and guidance as well. And then, of course, because my biggest addiction is technology. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I love it, and I think with some of the emerging experiences with extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, wearable technology, I think that's going to have a huge impact on some future aha moments. I mean, in 2018, we did a pilot and demonstrated how augmented reality images could be added to a ticket so that locators could use their mobile phones and actually see at the excavation area where a tree is being planted through an augmented reality image of that. That's like electronic white lining on steroids or something like that. I think there's really some real hope there. And the fact that we need to recognize the projections are that those cumbersome headsets that are now available will be reduced to glasses within 5 years. And I mean, that means you're putting on a pair of glasses, and you can do that now with Meta, with Ray-Ban, but they're not quite up to where a headset is. But when you have that level of technology and vision within your eyewear, just imagine what that can bring to damage prevention in regard to gaining access to real-time data easily visible within a spatial computing environment in the real world. And when Matt says we need to be changing the way we think, I mean, that's what we need to be doing. We can't be relying on the way we used to do things. We've got to look at how technology is emerging and growing and evolving, and how that can be leveraged to help us get closer to that finish line you mentioned.
I feel smarter, but I don't look smarter. Thank you, Scott. Mike, I mean, if you believe there are future aha moments out there for us that can change the industry, can you think of a change that might be on the horizon?
I can, yeah. I mean, we always have to challenge the status quo, right? I mean, there's usually going to be a better mousetrap, and you have to look no further than Kodak or Blockbuster to think, well, they saw it. In some cases, they had it and they tucked it away. Oh no, we're going to do that. Nobody's going to want a digital camera. And where are they now, right? So we really have to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge, but the leading edge. And where I see, for example, the one call industry, the contact center, it's big, it's clunky, it's, we've made some improvements. But there's still a lot going on there. But at the end of the day, what is a person who's requesting a locate? What do they want? They want to locate, right? They want somebody to go out and locate mark if that's what is necessary. So what do I see? I mean, I look at ALP and okay, that's pretty cool. How that works. You're really directing the excavator to the locate service provider, and that relationship is there. Where this could go, if we really expand our minds with this, almost like Uber. Where do I want to go? I want to go over there. I'm going to contact a driver, and I'm going to see who that driver is. I'm going to see what they're driving and their equipment is. I'm going to see what their rating is. I'm going to see their experience level, everything else, and also their satisfactory rating, to other people who may use them. Then why couldn't we do that with the locating and marking? That the one call center becomes almost like a hub for that. And it puts the excavator in direct contact with the locate service provider. And I see, as the excavator, I see how good or bad they are. I can move on to the next one, whatever that case may be. It doesn't diminish everything else that we do, the analytical data, root cause analysis, in improving the service. It doesn't diminish any of that, but it makes, I think, the contact center less clunky, less relying on people and more relying on technology. Are we there yet? No, we could do this. I mean, the technology is there. The only thing that stands in the way of that is ourselves. But I think we will get there. For example, I mentioned just a short time ago that we are investigating this year whether or not to mandate locate requests from the homeowners online. We've seen dramatic damage prevention and damage reduction, shifting from calls to clicks from members and contractors. And that was mandated a number of years ago. Homeowners, well, they dig once every 5-10 years, maybe once in a lifetime. We're not sure, So I mean, you got to move towards that end goal step by step, and that's one of those steps. But I think that's where this could go. I mean, for time and millennia, we hailed the taxi, and that's how it was done. And then Uber came out, and it's like, well, this is different, right? There's no funds, there's no cash changing hands. It's safer. And there was a reluctance from a lot of people to go there. But for those who use Uber, they would never go back to hailing a taxi, and with good reason. So this is where I see things could go. And I think, again, we have to keep our minds broad, to have that ability as leaders to see around corners and be on the leading edge, but not the bleeding edge.
We've all had a lot of moments in our lives, but we only remember a few of them. And those are aha moments, and they were either negative or they were positive. As I think about that, those aha moments become memories and kind of mile markers for us to measure our progress. With that in mind, based on this town hall, what are your key takeaways from this meeting that you think has a very big impact on where we are and where we're going? Matt, this will be our last question. We'll start with you.
There's a couple interesting things Scott and Mike were talking about, and kind of combining those, the new technologies, I think is fascinating. And I sit there and think, what else can people come out with? And I'm sure in 5 years, we're going to look back and go, well, how did we ever live without that? So that is very interesting. Grading excavators and locators is phenomenal, and how it ties back into what Scott was saying, where you have that grading and you have AI to be able to look at it to say, you know what, this company, this excavator has had issues. And then the utility is aware of that and knows, hey, this may be a place where I need to go out and I need to do a check with our quality assurance type work. So the grading excavators and locators, I think, is fascinating to do, and something that would really help everyone. And it would put people on notice. Hey, you're not a very good excavator. We're going to be watching you a little bit more, and it's probably going to encourage them to improve as well. So I think it's some great topics that I've heard today. Really appreciate that information.
Thank you, Matt. Scott, key takeaway.
Yeah, again, this has just been wonderful. I think the biggest takeaway is the value of these kinds of engagements that Roger, you keep having the town halls and so forth. In Virginia, we, as well as where we have LDPC meetings, stakeholder meetings, and so forth. This is really the key, where we come together and we share ideas and we get to hear what's going on. I learned so much today from now Alberta and Illinois, some things that are going on there as well. And it's where we can, kind of take that back to our teams and have a conversation and see how that could work in our respective areas and so forth. So, I mean, kind of, not anything deep or anything else. It's just the aha moment is just yet again how valuable it is to come together and have these conversations, and really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Mike, you'll close us out.
Similar to what my colleagues have said, we didn't do these town hall sessions before COVID, and now it's just the way we do things, right?
Yeah, right.
We could have, but we didn't, and now we do because there was a catalyst. And it's a good way to continually hold the bar and then say, here's where we are, here's where we need to be. I was recently at a conference. The Canadian Common Ground Alliance had its annual conference in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a month ago. And at the end of it, we were telling everybody that the next one's going to be in Calgary next November. And I asked, before I announced that, I said, how many people here were at the first CCGA event in Alberta back in 2013? And only 2 people put up their hand in a room of about 240 some odd people. And that was good, because that tells me there's a great turnover. And there was a lot less gray hair in that group of people than I expected, and there had been in recent years. So, that baton is being passed, and that's a good thing. I'm really glad to see that. And, there's the damage prevention, the objectives is in good hands. moving forward. And, Roger, holding these town hall sessions, holding the conferences that you do, where it's substance over style, that to me means a great deal. And these discussions, substance over style, means a great deal. That's what we need to get back to. Honestly, that's what we need to get back to, is to look at what we're doing. It's not the big things. It's going to be the small things that make the biggest change.
Thanks. I appreciate it so much, and thank everybody for joining us today. You'll be able to view this on our YouTube page before too long. We'll see you soon.